Manzone Giovanni. This is a pleasure that we got to start with Mauro and his family. And they're in Monforte Italy in the south of Barolo in Piemonte. And where the Gramellari vineyard is at is where their house is at. It's at the top of a hill. And from this area, you can actually look north and see most of the Barolo region because they're so high in elevation. The family has been there for 100 years this year. So they're going to be celebrating their 100-year anniversary this summer. And their wines are rooted in tradition. One of the things that I like to go through with talking about the Manzone family is really, you can look through always the Italian families and all of the pictures, and everyone has their old grandmas and old grandpas, but for them it's like this area of Piemonte, this is a struggle. Like, we think of Barolo now as like being this elegantly gorgeous area that always had the highest prestige, but it really wasn't that way. There was a long time in the 50s and 60s where it was hard to ripen Nebbiolo, and it wasn't in fashion. That even came up to a point where in the 80s, that's where you had like the Barolo boys. And the Barolo boys, they decided, there's a group of winemakers that they're gonna start using barriques. And they started using barriques because they were able to soften the tannins of Nebbiolo. Now, Manzone Giovanni, so Giovanni, he tried the barriques one year and he said it wasn't for him, but he still stays friends with all of his winemakers. It wasn't the same kind of clash that you heard of other families that were against people who were using barriques or people who were using large barrels. Nope, Giovanni went back to using the large botte as he always did, but still stayed friends with them. One of the things that you'll see now with his son, Mauro, who's taken over the winery, is he is part of a group of winemakers who play soccer and have these exhibitions, and they're called the Barolo Boys Soccer. Has nothing to do whether you're on barriques or you're on large cask. It's just about being together in the vineyards and being a community in Monforte and other parts of Barolo. So Manzone is in Monforte, and where the house is at, one side of it is Castelletto, faces towards Serralunga. Gramellari is on the top, and then it slopes down facing towards Bussia. Now, why this makes a difference is the Gramellari vineyard actually gets more sun and it gets a little bit riper. But even though it's getting riper, it needs a lot of time in barrel. So all the wines are aged quite long time, at least 3 years, and then plus in barrel. And either botte, the smallest barrel for a Nebbiolo is 700 liters. We have Gramellari, like I said, it's a slope vineyard. There's only 2 producers who have Gramellari, and what this wine has is it has this really pretty ripe red cherry fruit spice, but then has this structure of tannins, but then goes into elegance. It's rough and elegant at the same time. Absolutely gorgeous. The Reserva, more concentration, and you're having the Reserva in only the 700 liter barrels, not the big, large botte. The Bricot vineyard that we have is something that is unique. So Gramellari is an MGA cru. So this is part of the cru classification in Barolo. The Bricot is actually a portion of the vineyard of Gramellari, but it's further down in a ravine. And so the Gramellari vineyard is going up the slope, and then at the bottom of the slope is the Bricot. Now, that said, we are still up on the top of a hill. This is not like now down into a ravine, like low elevation. No, it is still high up. But there's another hill that goes right here. So this vineyard site gets a lot less sun in the morning, and it gets less sun in the evening as well. So it takes even longer to ripen. So the Bricot in general, not every vintage, but in general, it is always going to have a tannin structure that's going to be a little bit more grippy than the Gramellari. And because of that, I personally love those wines when they've been aged a few more years than the Gramellari. There's 2 other varietals that are grown by Manzone Giovanni, and that's Dolcetto and the Rossese Bianco. Dolcetto is important to the family, going back to what I was talking about before, in the sense that it was really the Dolcetto that kept the lights on for the family in the 50s and 60s. That was when you could actually ripen some Dolcetto and get something that was sellable. Nowadays, obviously, everything in all areas is being replanted to Nebbiolo because Nebbiolo is more profitable than Dolcetto. But Mauro has told me that he will always have Dolcetto because it is part of the tradition of the family and that it is part of why they are there now. Dolcetto is always going to be riper in fruit up front, but it's pretty tart and it can be a little bit bitter and elegant. It's a perfect pizza wine. Manzone will always have Dolcetto because it's part of the tradition of the family and what really kept the lights on during hard times in the 50s and 60s. Rossese Bianco is very unique in the region, and if you ever see it from any other winery, it has its origins with Manzone Giovanni. It was actually Giovanni who worked with the university to bring back this varietal. It was something that he thought was very unique and deserved the attention that it has now. They have a very small amount of it that's on the Castelletto side of their Barolo vineyards, which shows you that they made a big dedication to this grape varietal, because taking up a portion of your top quality Barolo vineyard is a big commitment. The varietal itself they first called it Rossese Bianco because they thought that it could be associated with Rossese from Liguria. That is not the case. And it is stylistically, for me, I always think about something like a Sauvignon from the Arbois, but also has that roundness of Chardonnay. So it has some spice quality on the nose, but then it still has that round, rich apple flavors as well. It does very well in oak and it ages excellent as well. They're usually aging it in oak barrels, French oak, around 500 liters. And the wine has a roundness and richness, but then it has a tightness. So you do generally like to see a little bit of age on this wine.